All right, Nicole, you're back. And the amazing distinction of coming back again on the podcast. I sometimes do things a few episodes with people back to back. Not often though. So you're in the club.
Oh, I feel so like got in, like I'm a big SpongeBob fan. This is a very like weird niche thing about me. There's a Club SpongeBob episode, and I feel like I'm part of Club SpongeBob now. So thank you.
You're part of something. I mean, what's going on here? Well, I just had a good time, and I'm a big fan of telling people how I feel about them and how things went. And I just feel like I had a really good time, and I felt
Mm.
like, man, this is over. There's more to talk about,
Yeah,
So let's keep it rolling.
it flew. It flew. I'm excited to be back. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, last time we didn't really talk about kind of imperfect success, the whole thing.
Mm.
And I was like, man, I got to get to this and talk a little bit about kind of the origins of that. So I wanted to start with that. And then, this is just going to percolate and go towards wherever it's going to go.
Sounds good. Well, I'll go ahead and like I'll call it the Reader's Digest version of the origin story.
All right.
And that is, I grew up in a family that was very, very heavily immersed in the personal development world. Like both my parents worked for Tony Robbins, among other people, for like 30 plus years. And it was awesome. I got to, attend the seminars, I listened to the audio tapes. So I very much grew up in um, the scope, the language of how can we be better every single day. Now, I do always like to put a little like asterisk here and just say this was the personal development world of like the 80s and 90s. So I do think that looks very different from the personal development world today,
Yeah.
which I'm grateful for in many ways. So I definitely had that like high achiever kind of embedded into me. But I don't love using the word victim, but I'm going to use it here for lack of a better one, which is I was the victim of very severe childhood bullying. And it got to the point where, me, this like very excited to be alive child, was very much shut down. I stopped, like, I've talked to my parents numerous times about it and just said, like, wow, I don't feel like I have very many childhood memories where I remember feeling happy, where I remember playing big. I was very quiet. I was very, small. I just played very small. And it wasn't until that was really where perfectionism like sunk its claws in me.
Yeah.
And as a result, I started going into, more like musical theater. And that was kind of my way of releasing. That was my way of like being loud, being big, but it was always masked behind a character. Right. And so that high achiever in me still lived. And she was like, okay, we're going to, go be on Broadway. We're going to move to New York. We're going to go to the best musical theater college in America, and it's going to be great. And I did get into one of the best in America, and I'm very, very grateful for that education. But it got to the point where I was so anxious. I was getting like, I'd say every other day, sometimes even daily panic attacks. I was so just unhappy. I was just really unhappy. I was drinking myself to blackout every weekend just to numb whatever feelings I was having. And as a result, alcohol, lack of sleep, and panic attacks don't really do well on The Voice as a musical theater major. So I was plummeting in my levels. I was plummeting in my performance. And my teacher finally sat me down and he was like, you're not going to graduate. Like, you're going to either have to leave or pull off a miracle. And I called my dad and I was like, I need coaching now. Like, my dream's on the line. I need to figure something out. And he coached me for, I want to say, like on and off for about a year and a half. And long story short, I graduated. But what was more important is I learned how to adapt those teachings from childhood and implement them, actually, because I wasn't doing that before. And then finally changed it to, what does this look? And this has been the process of the last like 8 years, it feels like. What does it look like to adapt that personal development, high achiever self to a recovering perfectionist like I am? So that's been the big thesis question over the past formally 5 years, but really 8 to 10 years since college. So that's my little origin story.
That's the origin story. Everyone has an origin story. It may
Everyone
not
does.
be a superhero origin story, but it's definitely an origin story. I hung on something. I like to go backwards sometimes.
Perfect.
It's good to go backwards. And I hung on to the previous like 80s, 90s self or personal development versus today. What's the difference? And you said for the better. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I think the personal development of the 80s and 90s was very um if you're not happy, change it. If you're not happy, hustle. If you're not happy, be happy in the moment, like change your state in a given moment. And I think that that's still apparent for the most part, but now I feel like we've added this whole other layer of self-care, self-compassion, slow, like not slowing down in the way of like, let me, lower my expectations on myself, but slowing down in the way of how can you live your life now, not when you achieve this certain level. And that to me is the game changer right there, because a lot of the personal development of the 80s and 90s, I feel like was always forward momentum. It was always like, what's my next goal? What's my next goal? What's my next level I need to hit? And I think that that was good. I think that there's good that comes from that, striving for more, like always having a vision, having a goal that you're setting your eyes on. But if you're always looking at that's going to be what makes me happy, and then you achieve it and you're happy for maybe 6 minutes, and then it's actually the next one, and so on and so forth. Learning how to develop that now is the big difference that I've seen. But I'm curious, do you notice a difference between like that kind of old world personal development versus now?
Yeah, I would say so. I want to talk about that. I'm on a stream of consciousness here, Nicole.
Sounds good. You're good.
Because we didn't talk about the whole Tony Robbins thing last time. And I was like,
We
I have
didn't.
several things I need to get back into about this. So, to answer your question, yeah, I think there's, well, personal development, personality development, self-care. We're in an interesting state because I have some, this is the hot take thing. We're always doing takes here. I
Yep.
think that the take is we're trying to fit people in these categories, right? It's like, hey, your development is based off of this category, and you're this on an Enneagram, or you're this
Mm-hmm.
on the DISC assessment, or whatever it may be. And that's just, people are more complicated than the category that they're placed in. For that, you vacillate between feeling great, feeling open-minded, feeling closed-minded, feeling agreeable, non-agreeable to things. It's a spectrum. Most things are a
Yeah.
spectrum. So I feel like humans don't like spectrums because they're not definitive mechanisms, right? It's like, well, just tell me
Yeah.
what I am. Diagnose me. This is what I am. But maybe it's just more complex than that. So
Well,
I
and
think
I
personal
think that goes
development
to our
is a little
need.
bit different.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes to our need, our desperate need for certainty, right? Our
Yes.
brain is always searching for certainty because it knows in certainty, hooray, I'll survive. And that's kind of our brain's, core function is how do I keep myself surviving today? And I feel like we cling to these things like Enneagram. I know people who make Enneagram their Enneagram number, their entire personality,
So
because they're
strange.
able to sink their claws and feel a level of control, a level of, like I keep saying, certainty in, oh, well, that's just because of my Enneagram. Now, I do think that things like Enneagram, DISC, Myers-Briggs, those are good to understand like your motivation or maybe some of your kryptonite, stuff like that. But if you let that be the excuse for not taking ownership over something you want to change, that's where I see it going really south. And I see people just keep themselves in a box because, oh, I'm an Enneagram 4, so da 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 da.
Yeah, and I think that's what I see happening is a lot of that is you start defining yourself by this number or everything. So, in a larger sense, this personal development is almost like personal identification of a number, of a type of thing that I see. And going backwards, I wonder how this, like the whole Tony Robbins things, I think is very fascinating. I watched probably like a lot of people on Netflix, the special, I think it was like, I Am Not Your Guru, whole thing.
Yep.
And I thought that was very fascinating. But please take us inside that with the family who's been like up and close
Um,
personal for a long time. Yeah.
I want to first and foremost say that the very few interactions that I've had with him, I want to be very clear. It's not like we're like calling each other up buds or anything like that. But Here's a good example. When I was 18, we'd been out of like going to every single seminar for a while now. My dad moved from being a ropes course leader to being one of his master life coaches. And so we hadn't been doing as many seminars, but we were able to go to a seminar when I was right before going into college. And they were very awesome. They got us really great tickets and everything like that. So we went to the Unleash the Power Within, which is I love that 4 days. It is a really, really amazing experience. And we like kind of worked our way up to the front during one of the dance parties because it's literally a concert for 4 days. Like it is high energy. And Tony points to my dad in the audience and he says, "Oh my God, Bill." And he like points to me, he goes, "Is that Nicole?" And I was like, "How the literal motherfuck do you remember my name?" And that was just a very genuine moment of like, oh wow, like that's someone who really does take care to consider people. I love listening to his stuff. I love attending his seminars and everything like that. And I love going into it with constantly reminding myself, take what works, leave what doesn't. And he even says it at the beginning. And I really appreciate that. I do think some people watch his stuff and see the intensity. And because he does talk very black and white, which I think for perfectionists can be a really slippery slope and a recovering one like myself. But I always remind myself, like, take what works, leave what doesn't. Sleeping 4 hours a night, not my MO. I'm an 8 hour a night minimum person. I don't have kids yet, so put that in mind. But like, I don't function off of any less than that. And I think that there's some things that he kind of declares as law that I don't think are necessarily good for everyone. But the mindset, the beliefs, exercises, all of those changes, I think that everyone could withstand listening and absorbing those tools and techniques because he's the top in this industry for a reason, in that way.
How do you, well, maybe not you, but just in general, the general you, separate like that whole concept of take what works and basically shoot off. It's kind of like metabolism. You take the energy you need and the rest is waste type of thing. But and the whole concept of a guru, and I love that special actually, is like, how do people not go into that mindset of like, okay, this is my guru, and this becomes all about Tony and not about a principle and ideas, and get wrapped up into the fandom and all that stuff?
I'm going to speak candidly. Tony himself is very against that from what I've seen. I'm obviously not in his head. There's some people on his team that godify him, and I strongly dislike that, to the point where if I'm at a seminar and there's certain people on the stage, I personally do not feel like I can look through neutral enough colored glasses to be able to take what they're actually saying. And I sometimes use that as my bathroom break or use that as time to go get some lunch. And I say that because I don't want to put him, and I'm going to speak from my personal experience, I don't want to put him on this insanely godlike pedestal. My entire life leading up until I want to say 21, 22, I was constantly asking myself, well, what would Tony Robbins do in this scenario? And that was putting this astronomical expectation on myself. He has an entire team. He has like 50 some odd companies. I don't have that. I don't have those resources, and that's okay. But comparing my output to his, like my conceptualized output of what he can do in a day, was really, really harmful. So I've switched that up, in my opinion. I've totally forgotten your two questions in your head, and I forgot one of them. Do you mind repeating it?
Yeah, no, it was mainly about like, how can someone, well, let me backtrack a little bit and maybe give some more frame for this picture here.
Yeah.
I think is that we're in a time where I think because of all the resources we have, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, social media, the many people have become are elevating themselves to quote unquote guru status, and like people end up becoming kind of this flock
Yeah.
of this person's ideology, and then they start forgetting who they are within it, and just, hey, there's good principles here, but how can a person be in something but also be critical and say, hey, this maybe is not a great part of this, versus this blind allegiance that I'm sure happens with Tony Robbins and people. Because I think this is part of
It happens a
critical
lot.
thinking. How can you become better at deciphering, like, hey, am I going too far in this? That I can't see the critical flaws in this, you know.
I think the biggest thing, I'm going to speak from someone who is a leader of sorts. The second I make it about my ego, about making sure I seem like the best, most important, most smartest person in the room, I'm doing something fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's not about me. I'm the vessel. I'm the person who's spewing this information or tailoring things to them. But in no way do I have all the answers. In no way do I have like this like godlike ability. I make it about them. What is the thing that they need to hear today? What is something that one person is struggling that I can help them overcome today? It's all about the mission rather than my own egotistical nonsense. And I don't know about you. I've got a really good bullshit meter, like
Me
to the
too.
point
Oh my
where,
god.
yeah, I figured you were
Yeah,
in
it's
that
mine's real high.
same boat.
like, like really high.
But like I can tell instantly when someone is doing it so that they can doing it, meaning creating content, meaning
Yeah.
being a YouTube person, like, you know, that kind of general thing is like, I can tell the second someone's doing that for their own egotistical output, their own egotistical outcome, excuse me, versus them actually giving a damn about the people who are listening.
Yeah.
And I have no effing interest in being around people who are just trying to like, so like I mentioned, I went to a musical theater school, and this might be a little vulgar for the show, so I apologize, but one of my acting coaches, he was talking about how whenever you're in a scene, it is all about the person you're in a scene with. It's all about connecting with them and making sure you're present with them. The second you are just there to be the funny one or to be the one that ever steals the stage, he hated that phrase, steal the light, that's it. The second you're doing that, you're masturbating on stage.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have no interest
Love
in being
that.
surrounded by any more people who are masturbating on fucking stages anymore. Like,
This is
when I went to
gold.
musical theater school, I surrounded myself with a lot of them for a while. And
Yeah.
I was fucking ridiculous. But that's the thing is like, the second you make it about yourself, you're masturbating. The second you make it about them, you're in a relationship with that person. And
Yeah.
that's the difference.
I feel like the bullshit's really high though right now. Like it's just like,
Yeah.
it's like really high. You know, it's like I know the things. Here's the thing. I know the things that I could do to make my podcast extremely big if I wanted to. I know
Yeah.
that. I know I could say a lot of crazy shit, lie completely about stuff,
Yeah.
take my shirt off, run up a hill, film myself doing crazy
Yeah.
workouts. I know that, but it's just like it just doesn't feel right to me. And I think we've crossed this
Exactly.
line where like, well, if it's whether it's right or it's true or not doesn't matter. It's does this give me clicks? And that's a
So
slippery slope, you know?
I follow two fitness influencers, I'll say, on social media, and oh my gosh, Soli is her name, and Ben Carpenter is his name. I can't remember her. I think it's Soli Fit. Um, and they make videos that are making fun of all the influencers who are like, these are gonna kill you. These have toxins. Like, and they're like, but everything has chemicals. Like, and they're so funny because it's like, it's just calling to attention the clickbaitiness of the day and age. Now, I think that there's a huge surge of this, like you're saying, for a reason. And I think that you know, if I have a video that has 2.5 million downloads, my brain is literally built to feel more important, more good about myself. That rush of dopamine is going to kick in and yada, yada, yada. And if I have a video that has two views, I'm now programmed to feel like shit about that. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that when people realize that if I say these ridiculous things that are definitely not true, or at best stretching of the truth, I get more views, which means I'm more important, which means I'm further ahead. And it's become this like race to nowhere, because view counts,
Mm,
in my personal opinion, yes, view counts are important for, we're in the industry of like, I'm not going to stand up or stand, I'm sitting, but I'm not going to sit at this mic and say follower numbers don't count or whatever.
yeah.
We've made them count. Let's take ownership. We've made them fucking count. But should they mean anything about your self-worth? Fuck no, please no. Same with view counts, same with like counts, whatever it is. But we've equated so much of those numbers to mean success. And there's just I'm curious what you think of this. Why do you think there is such a drive to be successful? I don't think it's right now, because I think it's always been that way. But why do you think it's been so put under a microscope?
The drive to be successful,
Yeah.
like in what sense? Like just
Like
through
that egotistical, like, let me be better than everyone else in the room.
that's a good question. I think yeah, I think there's more opportunity to have a voice. I think celebrityism has spread amongst I mean, this sounds bad to say, just the general public, general people,
Yeah.
your everyday working people believe that they can be a celebrity in their own mind. So it's like, okay, I have this microphone, I have this camera, and if I do some really wild shit, maybe it will lead to me being like amazing and people will love me and then I'll become more relevant than I am now. But it still doesn't make you great. I mean, it doesn't mean you're great. It just means that a bunch of people find what you're doing is just maybe they don't even like it. They just want to see the car crash. It's like it's not like you have to like the content you're into. You just could be watching it
Yeah.
because you just find it ridiculous. And you may even have a philosophical problem with it, but you keep watching it, which means you're contributing to it.
Yeah.
It's like this is
That's how
what's
I feel like,
interesting. It's interesting to me is the contribution is something you don't like, you know?
yeah. Well, that's how I feel like with, Facebook and like political fights on there and stuff like that. I'm like,
Mm.
I, I desperately wish that trend to die, like die a painful death. Like, I can't stand it. Um, but I feel like, I love my parents so much, but my mom, she gets really anxious really easily. I take after her in that way. And she'll scroll through the news and scroll through Facebook and
Hmm.
see everyone's like, it's like you say, it's a car crash. Like, you can't not look
Yeah.
away. And during like election times, I'm like, I already don't watch the news.
Yeah.
I get a lot of flack for that, and fucking, I don't care. Like, I
Who
just don't
cares?
care.
So
I
what?
don't watch the
Yeah.
news. I am so much happier when I'm not absorbing that. I don't get on Facebook very often. And if I do, I don't read that stuff, because it's
Yeah.
just like, why would I contribute to this? Because it's not affecting anyone but me. I'm not changing
Right.
anyone's mind.
You're definitely not changing anyone's mind. I'm not changing anyone's
No.
mind. You're just contributing to the clicks and the views for that. And I don't even have social media. All I have is LinkedIn. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows this about me and my podcast, and they go, "Well, why don't you have that? Your podcast will be bigger." I'm like, "Yeah, but you have to take a stand for things that you believe in and that you feel like because a lot of people, yeah, I mean, over 600 plus interviews, and I would say 90% of the people go, I hate social media, but I feel like I have to use it. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but like, okay, you're doing something you hate. All right. Normally, you would never direct someone to do that unless they literally had no other source of some, they had to like scrape, like, you don't need that. But there's
No.
this disconnect. And I just find it funny that like we're contributing to the thing we dislike. What does that say about us as people? I'm trying to get down to this, Nicole. I'm really trying to figure this
That's
out.
an interesting question.
Right? Why do
What
we
does
do
that say about
this? Please tell
I
me.
I have an idea. And that is, if we go way, 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 way back to the times we were living in tribes, living in caves, like, if you were ostracized from the group,
Yeah.
you were dead.
Yeah.
You couldn't survive just you. And while we've obviously adapted so much in technology and, we think we're so smart and everything, we're still those brains at our
Of
core.
course.
So I think it's just become this like completely socially acceptable form of slow torture that we're all just, and I say that as someone who has social media, like I'm totally contributing to this, but like, I think we've just become this, we don't want to be the person who has that, like, oh, I'm missing out, or, oh, I'm, not a part of it. And I will say this because something I've done recently, because I have an Instagram for my account for my business. And, I'll post on there and stuff like that. But something I stopped doing is like feeling like I need to show up and be Nicole, the business owner.
Mhm.
I've really let that go because, in my opinion, every time I showed up on Instagram as that person, I was immediately drained of all joy and
Yeah.
creativity. So I've started showing up as just like, here's Nicole, the absolute weirdo who actually
Absolute
happens to own a business.
weirdo.
Like I mentioned at the top of this episode, I'm a SpongeBob fan. I also read
Yeah.
fantasy novels. I also take 2 o'clock in the afternoon off on a Wednesday and I go lay out by the pool. Like, you know, I was tired of showing up as someone who I wasn't. And as a result, my algorithm started changing. It wasn't showing me like, trends or things in my niche anymore. It's now showing me funny videos about the novels I'm reading or funny videos about being married. I just got married back in June, like I said on our last
Mhm.
episode. Like, so, and I've started enjoying it so much more because I'm just like, oh, this is funny. This is good.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to like be promoting on here. I'm just enjoying watching something that's silly and weird. And I know that that's kind of like killing one bee and ending up with a hive in the result
Mhm.
because you're just getting sucked into the algorithm that's created to keep you on the app. But I almost don't care because I notice that I'm so much happier in results to the app now than I was when I felt like I had to show up a quote unquote certain way.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I really do. And I
You
want
can
to
disagree.
I know it's not even that. It's just like what are we being ostracized from at this point? Like it's not like we're in a tribe and it's like, wow, you're gonna stuck outside the cave. Fuck you. You're done. Like, it's like it's just you're not on social media and go see meet with your friends in person or something. It's like
Yeah.
it's not that serious. I just think there's an addictive quality to it. Honestly, it's a pill in a digital form to me.
Yeah.
And it's much like a great series to watch on Netflix, Painkillers is much about this, just like Dope Sick was on Hulu. The Oxycontin opioid addiction
Mhm.
is just it's heroin in a pill, right? Masked as this is pain relief. This is to me is being masked as community, but really it's just
Ooh.
crack cocaine on a screen. That's because the drug dealer says, I need you to become a regular customer. So I need to make something that you cannot have this high all you have to keep coming back to get the high. Isn't that exactly
Yeah.
what this is? It's
When
like
I also like, we don't know how to be bored anymore. Like
right.
I think about like, okay, I'm at a coffee shop. I'm waiting for a friend to meet up with me. I'm not just sitting there with my own thoughts. I'm on my phone.
Right. Or in a
And
line. People stand in line. They have to be on their phone. Okay, just stand in the
yeah,
line. Jeez, man.
like talk to someone.
Jeez.
Um, oh man, I have a TED talk basically to give on lines. I feel like
I
it's
know,
like the
right? Standing in
impatience
lines.
that we have nowadays. It's so funny. Um, anyway, but I think that like we don't know how to be bored anymore. Like, I mean, we might have talked about this last episode. I can't remember. I think even with children, with preteens, with college students, like it's being shoved down their throats of like, how
Yeah.
many extracurriculars can you do?
Yeah.
I think we did talk about this last episode, so I won't dive into it too much. But I do think that that's also part of this. It's like we just don't know how to sit still
Yeah.
at all anymore. And it's so uncomfortable to the point where people are like, oh my God, I need a hit. I need a hit of my
Let me
drugs.
take out my pill when I go to the
Shoot
airport and
them.
I go literally, when I go to the airport and I ride like the tram under the tunnel and stuff,
Yeah.
everybody's on their phone. It's like a 2-minute ride. And like, it's just this, everybody's getting their hit, their fix. How is that any different? Okay. One, you can say, oh, well, one's just ruining people's lives. They're out on the streets and stuff. Okay. This is maybe more insidious because it's not so obvious. but it's
Mhm.
still ruining a lot of people. And my thing is, a lot of people, I've just in my own observational data, I haven't met one person that's like, I just love this stuff. It's so good for me. Who says that anymore?
No one.
No one.
No
But
one.
we're still using like addicts. So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, okay, what's the breaking point? Or let me ask you this: what will be the breaking? Will there ever be a breaking point for this?
God damn it, what a good question. The scary thing is I don't know because I mean, even there was a moment where I was like, oh, if we hit it with TikTok and, the whole like stealing your data and all that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff and people feeling like it was a violation, but that didn't do diddly squat. Like
No.
that is still the most popular app on the market. So what is going to be the breaking point? You know what? I don't have an answer to that because either it's so horrible that my brain cannot think of it,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't see an option that is available right now that would do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know either, but I think that
Yeah.
more people are awake to the idea through a lot of the data that, and just their own feelings that this isn't great for me. But the disconnect is there's not a disconnect happening in general. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm still going to do this even though I hate it. I mean, it's just like saying I hate my ex, but I'm still gonna see him. It's like,
We
what?
all know those people
Right? It's
exist.
like, wait a minute, you shouldn't be with that person. Well, I mean, it is toxic, but still, I can't help it. It's like
That's a
that.
great way of putting it.
Really, that's just like literally what it is, and I'm like, why can't we get ourselves off of this? Because people actually do have a lot of power when corporations feel like corporations have all this power, but listen, you're the product. If you stop buying stuff, the corporation will kneel to you because they're just doing what you want to do. What
Yeah.
your effort, your consumerism is driving these profits or whatever it is. The companies are getting bigger because of us.
Yeah.
So if we stop our this behavior and we cut down, it's going to make a massive change. You think the companies are going to change? None of these companies are going to be like,
No.
we should do less. This stuff's bad for people.
Yeah, this stuff
Like,
is making us billions of dollars a year. Let's stop doing that.
let's do
Like,
less of that. That seems like a good idea.
I will say, like, I'm loving that there are more and more apps available that are that it's funny. It's apps that cut you off from apps, which is the
Mm-hmm.
irony is
I
not lost
know.
on me in that. But like, for instance, iPhones have I don't know about any other phones. That's just because I don't have it. But iPhones have a built-in system where you can limit your screen time and limit the time you spend on apps. So after 30 minutes a day, my Instagram goes dark. It's like, hey, you're done. No more.
Yep.
Now, here's the kicker though. You can be like, just 5 more minutes or just 10 more minutes or
Exactly.
whatever it is. And after a while, those buttons just be, it's so easy to just hit those. So, but there is a new one. I'm totally forgetting the name that doesn't have that option where it's just like, it's locked. You're done. And
Oh,
I love that more stuff like that is coming out.
I'd like to, yeah, I think it'd be good for the viewers and listeners to know what that would be. That would be interesting to
Yeah.
have. We could put it in the show notes or something.
I was going to say, I'll find it after this and I'll send it over to
Yeah,
you.
I think it'd be really good. It's just, this is, all this stuff, whether it's perfectionism or, connecting to each other, they're all behavioral things. It's about being a human being. And I like to really play in the area of like, what's the sticking point in these areas? Like, why do we say we hate
Mm.
something, but then we still contribute to it? Why do we see a terrible tragedy happening and then laugh at it? If it seems like, it's just this weird
Yeah.
stuff about people. And I just think social media is the great 2000s experiment on humans in relation to let's see what we can do to these fools, and like,
We're
and
not winning.
they
Like,
spend a lot of money on behavioral psychology and understanding nudging technology and how to keep you glued to these things. Listen,
yeah.
it's not like I'm perfect about it. I don't really have social media, but I do like YouTube. But
Mhm.
my thing is like, oh, I'd rather just, if I'm going to use some of this stuff, I'm going to use Zoom or whatever, and I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to use the
Yeah.
technology to further connection, not further my doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Like I just, how can we better get people to align? I don't like this, but I'm doing it. Okay, well, how can this come together that actually makes sense? Because you're just lying to yourself at this point.
Yeah. I think the reason we're so like, yeah, I hate this. It's not good for me, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's twofold. One, I think it's the comfort zone. It's the easy thing to do. We know how to do it over and over and over again. It's that basal ganglia taking over our
Yeah.
habits. The second reason is a lot of us don't know what to replace it with, or at least it's not a clear
Interesting.
idea of what we want to replace it
Interesting.
with. So let me get on my little neurological high horse for a second. But, you know, our brain is always going to go to the clear and the comfortable. So if we make, I won't say always to the comfortable, but it will lean towards comfort over uncomfortability any day. So if we have clear and comfortable as social media doom scrolling, it's going to keep going to that no matter what, because that's just how our brain is programmed. But if instead you're like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to scroll. And instead, I'm going to do this extremely specific thing. I'm going to empty the dishwasher. I'm going to read 10 pages of a book. I'm going to call up that friend who I haven't spoken to in a year, whatever it is. And that's what we say we're going to do. But so many of us are like, oh, well, I'll clean my house. That's not specific enough.
Yeah.
I should go after my goals. I should have a morning routine. I should. It's also attached to the word should, which already our brain is like, that's
No.
not fun. Let's do the thing that's easier, you know? So I think that's also the big reason is like, we're not replacing it with anything that's clear or that we know what to do instead.
Mm.
So I'm leaning towards that as I'm not going to say that's a cure-all
It's a
answer, but
great
I'm going to say
answer,
that's a
though.
large part of it.
I got to tell you, I never heard that before. I've been
Really?
doing this a lot for a long time. I've never heard that before.
I did a little
I
hair
have to
toss.
chew
Thank
on that.
you.
I really have to chew on that because, like, yeah, it's like, what do you replace the habit with? And I got to really think about that.
Yeah.
That's,
That's a very James Clear way of thinking. He wrote
yeah,
Atomic Habits. So he
yeah,
always says make it, oh God, it's four things that I'm totally forgetting. I know fun, obvious, easy, and I'm forgetting the fourth one. But anytime you're rewriting a habit, you have to make it like in your face, easy to follow through on, and some kind of enjoyable result for yourself,
yeah,
or else you won't keep doing it.
yeah. I mean, this is the, I mean, this is literally the problem with exercise for people. It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
this is literally the crux of why we struggle so much to get people to take care of themselves and a variety of things. It's like, because it's counterintuitive to literally all of that. It's like,
Yep.
oh, let's make this easy. Well, if you want to improve, it's not that easy. It's
No.
like, well, let's make it enjoyable. It's not always enjoyable. Like it's so many things that are
Yeah.
worthwhile are difficult. And I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes we're trying to rewire our existence to get that out of us. It's like, why does it have to be hard?
Mm.
Why does this have to be hard? Why can't we just make everything easy? That's a dangerous place to be moving towards, I feel.
Yep. I had a person on my podcast recently who said, I hate using the word easy. She actually used the phrase, it's a trigger word for me because she's a financial expert. And she was like, making money's not, learning the money game's not easy, but I can figure out how to do it with ease and like discuss the difference between that. Because I agree completely that there's so much like I think it's also maybe this is just the niche that I'm on Instagram. It's like, oh, like I made 6 figures with ease. I made a 7-figure company with ease, or excuse me, easily. And then when that doesn't happen for you, you're like, I'm doing something wrong. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. What am I doing that they're whatever? And it just becomes this immediate mental beatdown. Whereas that person's not explaining the 10 years that they've been in business for, the 5 employees that they have, the 100-hour work weeks that they worked, whatever their, thing was. And we're not seeing that. And I think that it's important to remember that nothing in life that's worth going after, there's blood, sweat, and tears. Like
Yeah.
there's always going to be blood, sweat, and tears, but you don't, I do want to say, I think a lot of people are making it way more miserable for themselves by trying to quote unquote do it all, by trying to, be on all the platforms and like all
Yeah.
of this stuff rather than like 80/20ing it and just like really leaning into what's the 20% of tasks that I can do that will give me 80% of the outcome that I want.
Yeah. It's
That's
just
a whole other
this is
podcast.
a
I feel
whole
like I
that no,
just
it's
touched
just
on.
this is really throwing me for a loop. Is the other thing too is like, and you just mentioned making stuff with ease. How do you even know that person's telling you the truth that they're making that type of money? Like you could be
Yep.
totally into someone online and they're saying they're doing this. There's a good percentage they could be lying about that.
Mhm.
So then there's a discussion about, are you following someone that's actually telling you the truth about how to get to somewhere? Maybe they're just lying to you. I
Yeah.
know that sounds somewhat conspiratorial, but it's not like it is, because how many times we've learned that these people are not who they say they are for that. So then that's a whole nother can of worms. It's like, well, what's the authenticity of the person? Because a lot of people make themselves out to be this much different person than they actually are through their avatar of online life. And
Well, and I
so,
think that goes back to the whole like, I'm doing this for my ego to get
mm-hmm.
ahead versus I'm doing this for the greater good. Because I I unfortunately know a lot of people like that. And like on the apps facing the audience, they're like, oh my God, life's so amazing. Da, 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 da. And then I'll get on a call with them and they're like
Yeah.
in tears because they're so fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I think, have you heard of the like, don't talk about it until you're out of the weeds trait
No.
that a lot of people are adapting?
Mm-mm.
A lot of people in the personal development world are saying, like, I can't talk about my problems unless I know how to fix them, unless I'm out of it and looking backwards. And I'm just like, well, whoop de fucking doodle for you.
Like,
Like, I
what?
don't know if I'm ever going to be at that
Who's
place
that?
because I'm
Like,
always going to have a new level, new devil. I'm always going to be figuring out something like, and I've been very open with people about like, I just started therapy about
yeah.
4 months ago, four
Yeah.
months ago. Sounds about right. Like, it's not been easy. I have had many sessions at this desk where I just have a mountain of tissues next
Of
to me. And just
course. Of
like, that's
course.
just part of the healing journey. But like, why on earth would I not? I mean, I'm not going to share details because I do need to have some kind of line
Of
between,
course.
my personal life. But like, why would I not share that? Like, hey, like, you're not alone going through this shit. Like, I've been studying this stuff for 5 years and I still go through it. And I'm sure it's going to be the same thing when I'm at 20 years.
Yeah.
But and that really just full circling it, that goes back to, in my opinion, the imperfect success of it.
Yeah.
I want to know the imperfect side of someone's overnight success story because it's never overnight success.
No, never.
Yeah.
It's always a much longer process than what you're seeing. She should like be sharing that with people. If you're gonna share anything, share that. Now, some people I think go overboard and they just share just all bad stuff. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
life's not amazing all the time, and it sure isn't terrible like every second. And it's like, no, you're not. You just can't be a victim all the time.
Yeah.
Stuff. It's like, I just think we're finding ourselves in a very precarious time where we're just like, the bullshit meter is like really weird for some people. Actually, a lot of people. So like they just don't see the BS coming for them. And I'm like you, like as soon as I step to someone and they start telling me stuff, I'm like, okay, this is nutty. I'm just like,
I'm like so out of that conversation.
right,
Like,
right. Can't you tell? Like as soon as somebody starts telling you stuff, I'm like, this sounds really nutsy. I mean, like this
yeah.
person's headed straight for a cult. You know it's coming. And it's like you had the signs of cultism like strong. The force of cult is strong in this person. Like you know what I'm saying. Like
I
people
do.
you're like the people who it's like there, if there's a scale, that scale is really high. Like they could be in a cult
Oh, yeah.
tomorrow. It's so true. Like, like I'm serious.
So funny. Oh my God.
You
That
see it
kills
in them
me.
quickly. You're like, oh man, watch out. You could be in one
Yeah.
very quickly. Like you just
So
you
you're
got
like, I'm glad you don't know where I live. Like,
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
really
like
glad.
as soon as they start saying certain things, there's always like the catchphrases, the words, they're out to get me. I don't believe anything, and it's just like, okay, you're in a trailer running up a hill on
Yeah.
Yellowstone. It's about to happen, man. It's some guy in a robe's
Yeah.
coming for you real quickly, man. It's like it's
Well, and
happening
like,
soon. Like,
I was just talking with someone else this morning about the difference between hope and complacency. And I think that a lot of us have this idea that like in this scenario where it's like the world is out to get me.
Yeah.
I'm set up to fail in this financial system. I see that all the time in
Yeah.
people in, like our generation, they are constantly saying, I'm never going to be able to afford so
Right.
on and so forth or whatever. And uh, that to me brings up the topic of like learned helplessness. It's like,
Sure.
fucking do something about it. If you're this angry, complaining about it on social media isn't going to do anything. First and foremost, do you need to solve it overnight? No, because you're going to set up to yourself to fail if you have that expectation. But you need to start taking little simple steps to
Yeah.
getting yourself out of that, because some people are doing it, so why can't you too? Now,
Yeah.
I do understand that, like, I am a privileged seat right now. Like, I grew up in a family that very much preached this mindset. We were never on the street by any means. Like, we
Yeah.
definitely didn't have, financial ease, but like we were, I always had clothes on my back. Like, I am in a very privileged position to say this. And I do believe that there are some people who say, well, going back to, well, I'm an Enneagram 4. So that's just
Yeah.
how my life looks like.
That's how it is.
And just like laying down and letting the world kick them. And it's like, get up. You can do this.
Yeah. And there's realities. Listen, it is harder to buy a home when you're younger now. And there are
Yeah.
certain financial realities and different things. No doubt about it. But it becomes shaky when like everyone's out to get you. I mean, it's like, are you
That's just
serious?
stories. That's
It's
stories you're
like
telling yourself
you're
at that
telling
point.
weird stuff out. I'm saying all of a sudden the ground underneath you is getting real shaky, and you could
Yeah.
be in a cult next week. I'm telling you. It's like
That's when I look at those types of people and I'm like, you know what? Like, there are people I will never go up to someone and be like, you need therapy, like
yeah,
flat out. I would never say that to a
sure.
person. However, there are those types of people who are in that learned helplessness who I don't think realize how effing negative or effing like um again, laying down and letting the world kick them, how much of the pattern they're in. So I'm like,
Yeah.
find someone who can call you out on this pattern that is completely invisible to you. Please.
Yes. And I mean think like you can be involved in something and two things can exist at once. You can both love the thing you're doing and feel passionate about it and also be very critical of the thing you're in and be passionate about that. And I think we're losing steam on that. I
Yeah.
feel like it's like, hey, I'm into this thing, but there's a lot of flaws with it. And I think where it becomes like really starts sliding down a hill hard is like where the thing you're in is like nothing's wrong. There could be nothing critically wrong with the thing I'm in. Never, ever. Like that's when you're going to be joining that organization very soon. I'm telling you. I
Yeah.
see it. I'm telling you. We started talking about BS meter. I'm like, I'm totally about this conversation because I feel like I talked to my wife about this. I'm like, can't. It's like you see it coming, but not everybody sees that coming. Yeah, they
Yeah.
just go, oh, sounds good. No thought
Yeah.
process about it. Like maybe this isn't great. It's like
Yeah. Like,
okay. I mean, if it isn't, I mean,
I just retweet. Like, I think that's just very, very prevalent right now. And again, going back to the whole social media thing, I don't see that going. I don't know how that would get quote unquote fixed anytime soon.
I think you're right. Probably just because even if you try to create more guardrails around it, then you have a large section of people who go, "You're censoring me.
Yeah.
You're censoring me. Like you're not allowing me to say the wildest shit I want to say." And then if you allow like
Yeah.
anything to go, then it's like, well, there's too much bad stuff going on here. It's like, where's the parameters? If people can't agree on parameters, then you just have an agreed upon chaos.
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of where we're at, an agreed upon chaos. It's like, well, we know it's crazy. So we're all agreeing this is crazy. Let's just
Yeah.
go with the
But we're
crazy.
not doing anything about
Right.
it.
When
I
does that
won't say
ever
that.
work
There's a
out?
lot of people doing stuff about it, but the majority who are being loud about it being work against them and da 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 are just, I mean, I see so many videos on like Instagram or, other social media platforms like that are just bitching and complaining about the state of the world, how, you know, I'm so sad and I can't do anything about it, and just like very hopeless, like just this
Yeah.
very like hopeless attitude. And I'm just like, I have to block that out, because the second you start consuming that kind of content, you become what you consume, right? Like your
Of
brain will start
course.
adapting to view the world through those
Yes.
goggles. And I just think that can be so detrimental so quickly that people don't even realize they're falling into this hole of like, oh my God, everything sucks and I'm sad about it.
Yeah.
Like I was just having a conversation with a client, a few weeks ago, where she was like really angry and upset about the industry she was in. Like really just going off on it. And I
Yeah.
told her to pause for a second. I was like, okay, like you've made your point very clear. Awesome. Thank you. Great. I can tell you're really heated up about this. What do you want to do about it? And she literally froze. She was like, I never thought about that. And I'm like, tell me about the people you hang out with in your industry. And
Yeah.
she was like, I asked, what are their lines of thinking? All the same. They all are so angry and so loud about it. She's like, oh my God, like, no wonder I'm in this position. I was like, great. What do you want to do about it? And that's when we started getting creative about new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching,
Yeah.
ways of her going about, she's an actress. So ways of her going about auditions. Like, that right there was the magic question that she had not even pondered. And I don't think a lot
Yeah.
of people are pondering.
Well, yeah, of course not. It's like there's just a lot of automatic consumption. And I also think this brings up another thing is like it's good to know how other people live, but I think we always cross the line where we want to know too much about how other people live. And then all of a sudden you start comparing yourself to how other people are living. You're constantly scrolling about what other people are doing. You're not actually living your own life for that.
Yeah.
It's like, so
Yes.
you can't spend so much time seeing how other people live. I know that sounds weird because you want to be exposed to other things going on in the world, but there's a line. It's one thing to see how other people live, go visit another country, go and do some tours, visit things. I feel like that's very positive. But if you're in this like free fall in whatever it is, YouTube, Facebook, and I mean, you're just like constantly being inundated, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
So
Like everyone on another client of mine, she was saying like everyone on my Instagram is going to Italy right now, and I just don't understand, and I feel like I'm doing something wrong, and I'm not traveling. Da, 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 da. And it's like everyone, in my opinion, also on my Instagram, everyone's going to fucking Italy right now.
yeah,
I'm going to Italy next year, so I can't really complain about it too much. But that's on my honeymoon. But one of the things I started asking her was like, okay, what's going right in your life right now? Oh, well, I'm starting my family. Like I'm doing all this, like all of this stuff, all of this stuff. And I'm like, great, that's the chapter that you're in right now. They're
yeah,
in their travel chapter. Let them be in their fucking travel
yeah,
chapter. Let you be in this personal, like family level chapter. You can travel to Italy in your Italy chapter, but
yeah,
you saying, oh, because I'm not in that chapter, that means I'm not enough. Bullshit.
yeah. That's with the too much time seeing what other people are doing.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like I always saw this. I remember when what came out was like Foursquare or something like that. And you could
I
like
used to work
check.
for them.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
I'm dead
Wow.
serious.
Wow, this is
They're
okay.
still
This is
around. They're still kicking.
crazy. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, tell me if I'm crazy here. I just want maybe I'm the crazy one, but I remember thinking when it came out, and I remember I was going to the movie theaters, and I was like, why are you people checking into the movie theaters to tell people where you're at? I don't want anyone to know where I'm at. I just always thought it was stupid. I was like, why are you
So
telling
the
people where you're
irony
at?
is I never had the app. I worked for them for two and
Funny.
a half years and I never had the app.
Isn't that funny though? Yeah.
Maybe got in a little trouble with my boss, but that's fine. Because I had a very similar feeling. I was like, I don't I don't want to like go somewhere to experience life, for lack of a better word, and then get on my phone. Same thing with like Instagram stories or,
Yeah.
making a TikTok B-roll or whatever it is. Like I want to go do something and enjoy the fact of being present there.
Yeah.
And I'm sad to say that I think you and I are a bit of unicorns in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are waking up to it. I do think that
I
that's
think
starting to
so.
happen.
I think you're right.
I'm very glad. Yeah. And I will say this, and I don't know if this has like been sociologically tested. When I got into a relationship that like very fulfilling relationship, not like I was posting to make sure he saw that I was having
Mm-hmm.
fun so we could toxic love it out, whatever. Like a actual, like I deeply care about you and I see the rest of my life with you relationship. I stopped posting so much. I stopped sharing all that stuff because I was just there with him.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's tested by any means,
Mm.
but I do realize, like, I think that was a big pivot for me, was when I stopped doing it for everyone else and just wanted to be present with
Yeah.
the partner that I was with, who's now my husband. But like,
Yeah.
I think that was a big turning point. I don't know. That's a thesis question. I don't know if that's something that's actually real, but
It's
that
an
was
interesting
definitely for
thing.
me.
Yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting thing. I think once I was never super into any of that stuff, but like I think having a child, makes me very cringy when I see people telling me they post all this stuff about their kids and stuff. I'm like, but listen, like there's a consent issue here. This person is going to be an adult one day. Maybe they didn't want you posting all this shit about them without their consent when they were a child, And one thing I love about my daughter's school, I thought this was so great. Went to the orientation and they were like, there'll be no videos in this school without anyone's consent. So if you want to take a video, if you're here and you're taking videos, you are not allowed to have videos of anybody in the school unless they give you consent to be in that video for that. I never heard that before. I never heard that before, ever. And I said, this is a great school. This is a good job, Like,
Sign her up.
let's just have some parameters. Again, we can't have this agreed upon chaos. Like, let's have some parameters
Yeah.
here. And I thought that's fair, right? If somebody goes, oh, I don't mind you videotaping me while I'm looking at myself and saying some random stuff. But there's plenty of people who do not want to be in that. They don't want to be in your video.
Yeah.
They don't want to be videotaped. They don't want to be part of your stupid channel that has, you, and then you're making fun of them in the background and they don't even know you're
Yeah.
there. Like, let's have some decency. And so I do think that was the first time I ever heard that, Nicole, like someone actually laying down
Yeah.
parameters for that. Why can't we do that on a larger scale?
I want to. I love that
I
so
want
much. I think
to.
that's
I want
so
to.
great. I want to. I think that that's so important because,
Yeah.
like you'll see people. I'm just pulling out a random scenario, like someone at the airport and they're filming someone who's like over in the corner picking their nose or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're like, hey, "Look at this stupid idiot!" Da, da, da,
Yeah.
da, da. And I'm just like, that person might have been up since 2 a.m.
That's
They
right.
might be tired as shit, and they might have just dug for gold because they didn't think anyone was
Digging
watching.
for
Like, just
gold,
let
baby.
be a
Let them
person.
be. Why do you need to do that? Like, I'm like,
I don't enjoy that, and I agree with the child stuff. Like my husband and I have mentioned, like, okay, like, when we have kids, like, and our kids are crying or having an emotion or anything like that,
mhm.
we are not going to whip out our phones and film them.
So weird.
So weird. I'm not going to whip out my phone and film my child upset about what is seeming like a stupid thing, but it's very real to them. Like,
Yeah.
that's also like, I do think that gets into, I don't want to tell anyone else how to parent because people are very squishy about that now. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
do
But I
that.
mean,
But
geez.
like, that is a hard and fast rule for me and my partner. And we've had a lot of conversations like that leading up to, someday us having children together. But
Yeah.
like, that is pretty high on the list of like things never,
Yeah.
ever, ever for us to do.
My daughter didn't ask for any consent. She didn't agree for me to put things out about her. I think like
Yeah.
when she was really little, I had a few pictures of her out way back in the day when I had Facebook. This was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this isn't right. I shouldn't have done that. Like, she
Mm-hmm.
can't consent to this. I don't want her to come back and be like, why'd you put that stuff up about me? Like, I had no clue. Like, I couldn't make that decision. And besides kids, we should do that for other people too. It's like, listen, stop filming me in the airport when I'm having a rough time. It's like,
Yeah.
dude's digging
I'm
for
having a
the
rough
winning
day. Let me
winning
get this
basket, man.
booger.
It's gonna get this massive booger out here, man. I don't need you. This should not make you big on YouTube, me picking my nose. Like, it's
Yes.
just stuff
I
like
agree.
that. Man, I tell you what, Nicole, this is actually a lot of magic here between you and I in these
Yeah.
conversations. I'm serious. This was awesome again. I
Thank
really
you. It was
appreciate you.
fun. So fun. I always love
Yeah.
talking to you and just
Yeah.
how real and sincere these conversations are. I'm
Yeah.
big fan, big fan.
Thank you so much. Part two here. So again, just let people know how they can connect with you and take it from there.
You got it. I have my own podcast. It's probably available anywhere you're listening to this show right now. It's called Imperfect Success. It's spelled exactly as you thought it would be. I'm also, like I mentioned a few times on this episode, on Instagram. I'm at Life Coach Baker on there. And you can find out all about who I am, what I do, courses I offer, free things I offer, coaching I offer on lifecoachbaker.com.
Fantastic. Nicole, it's been a pleasure again. Man, so good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Darian. It was fun.